Hello and welcome to the table, Baldurs Gate, DND, and Avatar: The Last Airbender, friends. Have a seat, grab your favorite drink, and settle in for a unique modded character build and subclass showcase of the Sorcerer. Today we'll be going over Stone Sorcery. The subclass of the Stone Sorcerer is Earth-themed, with thematic spells and damage output that we will be basing our build off of Toph Beifong, one of the most renowned earth and metal benders from Avatar: The Last Airbender. This episode will be going through all 12 levels of the Stone Sorcerer. Credits to Cody Abode, the mod author, for putting the time and effort into bringing the theme of this class and its features to life. With the character build, I want to stick to spell and leveling choices that are in line with earth-based themes, and of course to pick choices that closely represent our feisty earthbender Toph. Now, for those who are new to the channel, one of my main focuses for videos is creating unique Baldurs Gate 3 characters, utilizing mods both for enhancement and roleplay, specifically giving you different types of replayability. Now, if that's something you're really into, I would personally love to hear your favorite character builds in the comments below, and let's get an in-depth discussion going on what characters you would specifically build this class around, what you would multi-class it with, or completely out of left field character build requests. Side note, I also have videos of narrative-driven Total War Warhammer campaigns, both of modded and non-modded factions, to show and tell unique stories of each of the individual leaders. Now, if you love talking shop about character builds or epic story-driven war campaigns, consider hitting the like, subscribe, and bell icon notifications for more of those unique adventures. Also, for any new viewer who only stumbled upon this video, the way we will structure the character build is going through the starting level with specific choices in race and other leveling features, going through levels 2 through 12, and then wrapping up with specific gear and equipment to complement the build in terms of roleplay or improving stats or spells. Now, for character builds, I really do try my best to stick with choices and spells, abilities, equipment, etc. that suit the characters thematically, like in this case Toph, or trying to keep in line with what the mod author themselves intended this class to be or to play as. Oftentimes though, I may slip into choosing metagamey or min-max damage output choices, but I am aware in the D&D and Baldur's Gate communities, there's some players who really just want to be role players, and some who are really about the number crunching. Now, whichever camp you fall into, or if you find yourself to be a little bit of both, just as long as you yourself are having fun with the builds and playstyles, that's what really matters in the end. Now, the reason I want to go through 12 levels only as the class alone is to really showcase everything there is to offer, and this is my way of saying a genuine thank you to Cody Abode for their time and effort. And yes, as an extra thank you, I will of course leave the link to the mod in the pinned comment below. It should be at the very top of the comments section, along with a few other mods like race or spell mods used to pair well or also to enhance the modded class further. We most definitely will be saving separate videos for multi-classing modded classes together. I already have several in mind with this, plus a few other modded classes too. We'll be modding them together with other modded classes or even base game classes to really see what types of wild synergies we can come up with. Now, without further delay, let's get into the first level of this build. At starting level, yes, it may seem very Billy Basic to be a human. Technically speaking though, Toph is human in the TV show, and also we will be using a human variant mod that allows us to choose different passives to really enhance our build style, and also this gives a whole bunch of different variety for us to really build other really unique characters around. Now, without getting sidetracked though, let's go over the 3 passives that will enhance our build and also be very useful both early and late game. Fast Hands, it's a passive feature of gaining an additional bonus action. Very simple description, but also insanely useful too. The fact that I will, yes, returning viewers know this all too well, I do tend to harp on action economy and having additional actions, or also specifically potential attacks in battle can be pretty much make or break for you. Improved critical hit. Another simple description. Number you need to roll a critical hit while attacking is reduced by 1. Effect can stack. Now, this can also stack with a few other pieces of gear or leveling, depending on the route we go. But I find this incredibly useful at early level. You never know when that reduced one could come in handy. Uncanny dodge, also somewhat of a simple description, but just like the other two, insanely useful too. Lightning quick reflexes protect yourself. When an attack hits you, you only take half the usual damage. This provides us a little bit of tanking potential and also evasiveness as well with Toph. As for cantrip choices, I will admit it was somewhat difficult to keep to specifically only earthbender theme. However, we did our best by choosing mold earth, manipulate the earth to your whim, allowing you to create a mud surface that becomes difficult terrain or to remove a mud surface. Sword burst, which is 1 to 6 force damage. Yes, I know it's not technically earthbending, but the force damage we can somewhat justify. Create a momentary circle of spectral blades that sweep around you to strike nearby creatures. Booming blade, strike a target with a melee weapon, surrounding them in a booming energy that detonates and deals 1 to 8 thunder damage if it willingly moves. Friends, this can definitely be justified as saying that, well, Toph is charismatic and, well, she was really good at making friends with Team Avatar. The spell choices are easier to stick to role-playing though. With Earth Tremor, we deal 1 to 6 bludgeoning damage, cause a tremor on the ground, becoming difficult terrain, and affecting nearby creatures, possibly knocking them prone. This is really good for AoE crowd control, and also Catapult, 3 to 24 bludgeoning damage, much higher than Earth Tremor in terms of damage output. Retrieve an object on the ground that weighs up to 5 pounds and launch it at a creature. To keep in line with the roleplay of Toph, technically she was from a royal background, thus we're going to choose noble, giving us skills in history and persuasion, although Toph herself didn't really embrace the noble lifestyle. As for ability point output, we are going to put most of our points into charisma. This does make sense roleplay and also metagame wise because of the fact that charisma is our casting modifier, plus also Toph herself was pretty charismatic too. Wisdom we're going to leave at 10, and this is going to be a bit of a risky maneuver. We're not just taking points away from strength, but also intelligence in order to fuel our constitution, giving us more health and more survivability, and also decent dexterity too, giving us a higher initiative in combat and also higher AC and ability to dodge. With skill proficiencies, we have a +1 to history, +2 to insight, +2 to survival checks. This is just chosen for roleplay purposes. Toph is pretty intimidating herself, so she's going to get a +5 to intimidation, and also pretty good with her use of words too, so she's going to get a +5 to persuasion as well. Also, I forgot to mention this up in the level up screen, but we gain spells that are specifically weapon based. For Stone Sorcerer, we gain Wrathful Smite, dealing psychic damage, Thunderous Smite, dealing thunder damage and possibly pushing targets away and knocking them prone, Searing Smite, which is fire based. At second level, we gain sorcery points, the ability to create a spell slot, and the spell choice I would personally pick here would be Grease, covering the ground and possibly making groups of enemies fall prone. This is all for crowd control purposes, and yes, it is somewhat questionable and whether this is good roleplay wise, but we can definitely argue that Toph would have this kind of ability to essentially create mud and just make really difficult terrain. For the class passives, I would personally pick up Distant Spell, increasing the range of all spells by 50%. Specifically though, melee spells do get an increased range of 9 meters. Twin Spell, I personally will pick this for, yes, you guessed it, crowd control capabilities, using sorcery points to target an additional creature with a spell or cantrip. At third level, we gain an extra sorcery point, more spell slots, an extra spell to choose from, which I would personally pick Maximilian's Earthen Grasp for roleplay, but also useful mechanical features. Create a hand composed of soil to crush and possibly restrain a creature for 10 turns. Restrained creatures cannot move. Attack rolls against the affected entity have advantage, while the entity's attack rolls and dex saving throws have disadvantage. We also gain Metal Magic, and this is definitely justified in my personal opinion. Metal Bending is a subclass of Earth Bending. We'll gain Branding Smite, dealing 2d6 radiant damage, and also Magic Weapon. Infuse a weapon with arcane energy. Weapon becomes magical, receiving a +1 bonus to attack and damage rolls. As for the class passives, I would personally pick up Quicken Spell. Yes, it is a little bit costly with sorcery points of 3 instead of 1, but I personally would say that the cost is well worth it, with the effect of having a cantrip or spell cost a bonus action instead of our regular action. Again, I'm going to harp on about action economy and being able to take multiple turns or attacks in one round, so this is definitely going to help us out, especially in later stages of the game. At level 4, we gain more sorcery points, a cantrip, which, to be honest, there's not really much in terms of roleplay potential, but pick whatever you want there. The spell choice I would personally pick would be Hold Person. You could justify this as using Earth Bending to keep a target in place. Plus also, this is really good for holding down boss enemies or mid-tier boss enemies for you and your party to just wail on. For the feat choice, I would personally pick Ability Improvement, dumping all of your available points into Charisma. Yes, I know it's 1 below 20, but at the same time, one of the other feats we will pick later on in the leveling will round it up to 20 and thus give us a solid +5 overall, increasing our casting and also damage output from spells. At level 5, we gain more sorcery points and also an extra spell choice. I would personally pick Erupting Earth. This can be incredibly devastating, dealing 3d36 damage. A fountain of churn earth and stone erupts in the area, changing the ground to difficult terrain. So not only does it have a massive damage potential, but also making movement speed half for our enemies for 10 turns. We gain more metal magic like Blinding Smite, 3d8 radiant damage, and the potential to blind our targets. Elemental Weapon, imbue a weapon with elemental power, receive a +1 bonus to attack rolls, and deals an additional 1d4 damage of your choice. At level 6, we gain a spell choice here, which I would personally pick Haste. It is a little bit of a risk reward thing to do, because with Hasten we gain an action, become faster, and gain +2 to armor class. But once our condition ends after 10 turns, we do become lethargic. So I would personally, you have to really time this well with Haste. I would personally save it for mid to late in the battle, just because once you've killed the enemy, the 10 turns are up, then it's okay to become lethargic and out of combat. We also gain the action of Stone Aegis, grant an Aegis to an ally, giving them resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage, and damaging anyone who hits with a melee attack. So this is not just a support spell and action, but this is something that you can do damage passively or over turns, if that makes sense. At level 7, we gain a spell choice, which I would personally pick Stone Skin. You can use it on yourself or an ally in combat. Affected entity will only take half damage of all non-magical bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage, giving you that tanking potential. With metal magic, we gain Staggering Smite, 4d6 psychic damage, possibly stagger your target. It can't take reactions and is more likely to miss. Pretty good overall, not support, but status effects there. At level 8, the spell choice that I would pick here would be Counterspell. Yes, it's not technically earthbending, but as a caster, it's nice to have this to literally counter other casters, and essentially it's something that I would always pick up at any stage, regardless of what kind of character or modded character we'll be making. Really, for the feat, I will be using a modded feat called Gift of the Gem Dragon, which we can increase our charisma by 1, and also when we take damage from a creature within 3 meters, basically a melee attack, we can use a reaction to deal force damage and attempt to push the creature away. This is definitely something that Toph would do, and with that 1 extra point into charisma, we can max it out to 20, giving us an overall +5. At level 9, we now have access to another earth spell, which is Wall of Stone. Raise a wall of non-magical solid stone. We could use this as potentially a barrier, or even as a vaulting point too. Definitely a lot of creative potential with it. At level 10, the cantrip choice doesn't matter too much. I decided to go with Poison Spray. For the spell choice though, Hold Monster is very useful at this stage. Essentially the same as Hold Person, but make it monster flavored. And also getting critical attacks on large creatures is going to be very useful for us. For the passive here, I would personally pick up Extended Spell, mainly for conditions of difficult terrain and also causing havoc and making sure that the surfaces that you create stay there longer and just cause even more problems. At level 11, we gain a spell choice, which I would personally pick Disintegrate, dealing 50 to 100 force damage. Shoot a thin green ray from your finger. I know it's not really earth-based, technically speaking, but the force damage we can potentially justify there too. We also gain the subclass feature of Mastery of Earth Magic, allows you to add the force of an elemental earth to your spells. When you deal damage with a spell, deal an additional 6 force damage. So yeah, force damage, kind of earth spell-ish if you really want to stretch it that far. But it's nice to just tack on more damage to all of our spells overall. And at level 12, the spell choice that I would personally pick here would be Flesh to Stone, atrophy a foe, restraining them until they temporarily turn to stone for 3 turns. This is kind of like a pause button for certain enemies. So if you have a very pesky boss enemy that you just want to restrain and make them lose their turn while you deal with their minions, 100% use this spell on them to troll them. And the feat here, yes, we're really doubling down and leaning into the sorcery class with the modded feat, Meta Magic Adept. Basically gives us a sorcery point and also a choice of different 2 passives actually. So with the remaining choices, Meta Magic Heightened Spell, enemies have disadvantage on their saving throws against your spells, and personally for me, Subtle Spell is really useful too, only costing 1 sorcery point, can cast spells while silent. Alright friends, when it comes to the equipment and gear choices, I know this seems like a very goofy setup, but surprisingly it does work hand in hand together literally. Plus also, we're choosing these mainly to try to stick to Toph as a character, and also these do surprisingly pair well with some of the features in this subclass of the Sorcerer. So with the headpiece, I'm going to be using the Scabby Pugilist Circlet. Weapon and unarmed attacks deal an additional 2 damage when surrounded by 2 or more foes. This is kind of like a crowd control gear, even though it's just a meager 2 damage. This is kind of like saying that you are willing to go into the fray. Also, for the cloak, it's just a simple cloak of protection, increasing our armor class and saving throw by 1. Main armor piece here will be a Vest of Soul Rejuvenation. Whenever the wearer succeeds on a saving throw against a spell, they gain 1 to 4 hit points, so this is kind of a nice little reward for us on dealing with enemy casters. And also, with Greater Kushigo counter, the wearer can use a a reaction to make an unarmed strike against any attacker that misses, plus it gives us an armor class of +2. With our glove choice here, Spell Might Gloves, when casting a spell that requires an attack roll, you can take a -5 penalty to the roll to deal an additional 1d8 damage. I personally think that's totally worth it, just because, well, I'm kind of a greedy bastard, and also the extra damage to outright potentially kill an enemy, and especially in the early stages, that's definitely something I'm going to take up. Bone Spike Boots, this is going to pair well with our extra bonus action of literally jumping around the battlefield, knocking enemies prone, and literally using Earthbending Stomping to cause absolute havoc. Evasive Instinct, you have a +1 bonus to armor class and saving throws as long as you are not wearing armor or holding a shield. Well, shit. That does kind of negate it, but we mainly are picking this up for Refined Vaulting, increased by 1.5 meters for jump, and Brutal Leap, jumping at a target and possibly knocking them down. As for our amulets and also rings, we'll be using the simple Spellcrux amulet, being able to restore a spell slot of any kind, Ring of Free Action, ignore the effects of difficult terrain and can't be paralyzed or restrained. And then, yes, I know some of my returning viewers have seen this before often. Ring of Regeneration. Increase at the beginning of our turn. Ring activates and heals us 1 to 4 hit points. It's a nice little self-sustain for us and will pair well with Greater Kashigo counter, or Defier's Rejuvenation. We'll also be using a shield for this build, and yes, this subclass does have access and proficiencies to shields, of all things. We'll be using Shield of Returning. The shield binds to your being, returning to your hand if thrown. This is essentially an extra throwing a weapon attack for us, and we'll be using Staff of Spell Power, mainly for Arcane Battery. Alleviate the arcane burden of your spell casting with the power of the staff. The next spell you cast doesn't cost a spell slot. And also we gain a +1 bonus to spell save, DC, and spell attack rolls. So yes, kind of a goofy combination and amalgamation of things that somehow work and synchronize pretty well, surprisingly, together on the battlefield. Alright everyone, that has been my character showcase of the Stone Sorcerer. Let me know if you have any differences of opinions with the leveling, gear, equipment, or just overall build of the character. I would really love to hear your personal opinions on how you would make Toph, or how you would make this class uniquely your own too. And for all the new and returning viewers, if you've watched this far into the video, thank you so much for taking the time to really see what this class has to offer. And yes, in the future, we will be creating new different class builds, both of multi-classing and also just all 12 levels of modded classes. I absolutely love the modern authors and the overall Baldurs Gate modding community. There is a lot of creativity with these character builds, and I look forward to showcasing more of these Warhammer videos in the future, and eventually Elder Scrolls as well, with modded Skyrim builds, but that's definitely getting ahead of ourselves. Until then, friends, take care, and I'll save you a seat at the table for the next adventure.